Hello and welcome to the Albion Obsessed podcast. We come to you on the back of a disappointing defeat to Manchester City. Although, can it really be called a disappointing defeat if we all expected to lose anyway? Let us know in the comments below. So, let's talk about what we're going to talk about. But before we do talk about what we're going to talk about, we're going to talk about who we've got on the show today. Joseph, we welcome you back. How are you, my friend? How are you keeping?
Hello. Yeah, all good, mate. Happy to be here, and yeah, let's talk about some footy football.
Let's talk about football, Joe. But let's talk about Kurtis' friend, who also joins us today. Kurtis, how are you doing, my friend?
I'm good. Yeah, very, very good. Happy to be here with you, beautiful, beautiful individuals, to talk about football.
Oh, that was nice, Curtis. Thank you for that lovely little comment. Now, as I've said, guys, we're going to talk to you about the defeat to Manchester City at the Etihad. But before we do that, Joe would like to let you know about a little app that we are currently using. So, Joe, over to you, my friend.
Yeah, so this new app, I'm speaking to a guy at the moment who's one of the many people behind the app at the moment called Parlay Sport, and the guy's called Jack. So, first of all, a big thank you to Jack for allowing us to be on board with this project. It's really exciting. So, what this app basically is going to allow us to do, and it's going to give us tools for very positive and in-depth football chat away from hopefully the toxicity of social media, because what it is, it's a video based platform where you can invite all your friends, and it's face-to-face video, as I say. So hopefully it will take away that keyboard warriorness that we all know and definitely don't love, so we can sort of have a face-to-face conversation, and yeah, just get our opinions out there in a nice and healthy way, basically. So the logo is down below there, just beside Kurtis. So if you go onto the App Store, I believe it's only on iOS at the moment, but it is coming to Android very soon. Type in PRLY, and you shall see that logo there. And give it a download, make a comment, a profile, and yeah, we shall be on there. My ad is Sayers BHAFC, just like my Twitter. Tom, yours is Exiled Seagull on there, and Kurtis, yours is Sea Friend. So yeah, give us an ad, and we'll hopefully catch you on there very soon.
Yeah, definitely download it, guys, and engage with us on this new app that will hopefully, increase engagement, and let's share our thoughts and opinions in a sensible, lovely way. And I'll talk a little bit about that in a little while, because I had some quite nice engagements with people on Twitter in which we disagreed, but we did so in a respectful way, and it was very refreshing. But I'll get onto that a bit later. So let's talk about the Man City game. Let's start, I suppose, where I always like to start, Joe, and that is the starting 11. Roberto De Zerbi named an unchanged 11 from our game against Nottingham Forest. Were you surprised at all that being the case, or did you expect any rotation?
A lot of fans were calling for something different, because, as we expect, it's a free hit when you go to the Etihad. Really, um, not anyone but Liverpool and people like that can compete with them. Even then, they struggle. I know Liverpool won, but the top four even struggle against them. So I wasn't overly surprised to see an unchanged 11, but I also wouldn't have been surprised on the flip side if we did try to give Ndav a go, or Sarmiento, or a few of the younger, fresher legs, and see what they can do. Because, as I say, free hit. What I think at the moment is Roberto De Zerbi just trying to get an established 11, and then he'll go in and make some changes where needed. Really unfortunate, obviously, about Mitoma's injury before the Forest game. And yeah, it's just really frustrating because he was hitting the ground running. I really thought he could have at least been in the starting lineup for the last two games. So yeah, hopefully we see a nice quick recovery for him, and he can be running down our wings very soon.
Yeah, let's certainly hope so. Let's hope that that injury doesn't keep him on the sidelines for too long. Curtis, there's some interesting points there that Joe mentioned. Essentially, some fans seeing this as almost as like a free hit because of it being Manchester City, but at the same time, you don't want to go to the Etihad, put on players that haven't played together much at all, and then have an embarrassing scoreline. In our last pod, when we talked about the predictions for the game, I think Aaron said anything below 5-0 would have been okay. So I suppose keeping the same 11 was probably the sensible choice, wasn't it, to go up against Manchester City?
Probably, yeah. It's probably the safe bet, considering these are the players he knows what to do with and what have you. To echo something Joe was saying about Matoma, I feel like Matoma probably would have started actually in this game, because there was talks of that. I think Naylor put something out about it. So yeah, I mean, hopefully we get to see him soon, because I feel like he is definitely one that's going to contribute a lot moving forward. But yeah, I again, to echo what Joe was saying, I just think he's trying to establish just his starting 11. So I think also watching your team play against a team like City can really put things into perspective for you and figure out who's good at what, and that sort of stuff. So hopefully going forward he'll have a bit more of an understanding of who plays better against these bigger teams and whatnot. So
yeah, definitely. I think there's certainly an argument to be had based on the performances we've seen against Liverpool and Manchester City this season under Roberto De Zerbi, that I think we'll do quite well against the so-called Big Six, or the teams that don't just sit back and defend all game. Because I think, and we will obviously talk about it, we did look very good, especially in the second half. But more on that a bit later. Talking of the way we play against these teams, Joe, in the pre-match press conferences, Roberto De Zerbi, he very much came out and said, we're going to play our game. We're not going to stop, doing what we want to do just because it's Manchester City. And I thought it was very interesting, the tactics, Joe, especially that first 15 minutes. We were going man for man, which is a bit unheard of in this day and age. Do you think that was probably the best way to start against Man City, considering the players and the talent they've got in that squad?
I think it is. I think you have to believe in yourself first and foremost, or don't turn up to the game. Pretty much, you go into a football stadium in the Premier League to play football. You want to play football, and I'm so glad that we've had two managers that have that outlook, because we've given some really good teams some really good games. And that's also giving Graham Potter credit for what he done as well. So you can't ignore that fact. And yeah, I thought again it's really brave from us, really, really confident in our own abilities. And I think that maybe shocked Man City for a little while. And for big periods in the game, as we'll talk about as we go on into the podcast, we looked really, really good. And the performance levels are there 100%. We've seen it against Forest. I know it was really frustrating. And I know a few of the fans on Twitter and or even on our podcast have been frustrated with the fact that we haven't won a game yet. And I absolutely get it, but the performances are there, so I'm not too concerned. And to play like that against Man City, to play the way we did at Anfield, really promising stuff. So, going into this Chelsea game, I know I'm jumping forward a bit, but going into this Chelsea game, I really think at the Amex we can get it rocking and we can get another really good performance.
Yeah, let's certainly hope so. More on that a bit later. So, Kurtis, I mentioned there about going man for man, and Joe mentioned about City not really knowing how to counteract that. I think that led to our first chance of the game, where we were, as I say, we were marking man for man, and Edison puts out a ball which Welbeck pounces on, and he has a shot from distance that sails over the bar. Probably a bit harsh, but do you think Welbeck could have done a little bit better there?
I feel like it would have been a bit of a struggle to maybe do any better in that sort of situation. It was a really tight spot, and I don't want to be the guy that lumps on Welbeck, because that's not what I want to be about, or and that's not what we want to be about here. But I'm sure he knows he has to do better in those sorts of situations, and I'm sure that's putting a lot of pressure on him. And I know as soon as he scores a goal, it's going to give him so much confidence. So we just have to get behind, Welbeck and support him, as opposed to just writing horrible, just disgusting stuff on the internet. Just support these people. That's all I'm saying.
Yeah, definitely. And I don't think I don't want it to be misconstrued that I'm criticizing Welbeck. It was just a simple, was that the right choice to shoot from distance? And even if he'd done so, could he have done
But
better?
ultimately, I'm glad that he's trying, because it'd be more of a concern if these players weren't trying to score. Because I think Solly said this in a couple of the post-match interviews. He said if we weren't making chances, it'd be more concerning than not even trying. So.
Oh yeah, 100%. And I think that's the thing we need to keep remembering. We are creating chances, and eventually those chances will turn into goals. And we did actually see a goal. So that's good, and we'll talk about that in a bit. But I did think, Joe, we did a pretty decent job of containing City in the first 15 minutes. It wasn't without incident. I think arguably Manchester City should have been given a penalty as Sanchez clipped Haaland. What was your view on that incident?
It's one of those where it's like, it can go for you, it can go against you. So many of these referee decisions that we're going to talk about today are very much the same thing. You can be viewed as one way or the other. And I think maybe we were lucky to get away with it. And then on another day, as I say, it goes for them, and they get a penalty, and they're off scoring earlier on in the game, and the game turns out completely different. I think we're quite lucky that it wasn't given, but we move.
Yeah, I mean, for what it's worth, I thought that was a penalty. Certainly more of a penalty than the second penalty, which we'll talk about in a bit. Just your view on it, Kurtis. Was Sanchez lucky there?
Extremely, yeah. I was, when I watched it, I just sort of went. I was like, "Oh God, no!" I was like, "What have we done?" But yeah, like Joe said, we're very lucky to, because it could go any other way on a different day, and in a different game. So very lucky to have not had a penalty there.
Yeah, no, I mean, we've got to say this. Unfortunately, that game was littered with poor officiating and poor VAR decisions.
Imagine my shock.
It's quite interesting, Joe. I shared I tagged Albion Obsessed in a video I saw this morning, in which there was some footage of the A League, the Australian League, where you can hear the VAR assistant referee and you can hear the on-field referee having a discussion as they discuss through an incident that happened that the referee did get wrong initially. And it's just very refreshing, isn't it, Joe, to have that transparency between the VAR and the referee and being able to hear that as a fan.
Oh, incredibly refreshing, incredibly uh, promising as well that it's being trialed. I know we had a discussion about this on the last podcast, and Aaron said that it wouldn't happen, and he told us for why with the players' language as it is. But I think therein lies the issue. The respect between the players and the managers, players and the referees and the officials, it's non-existent. You've seen what happened with Jurgen Klopp in the Man City game. He literally shouted in the fourth of his not the linesman's ear, and the respect just isn't there. And I think if there is voice recordings and these players and officials are held accountable for what they do, that respect level would go astronomical. You see it in rugby, and I know I always say this, but it's the captain and the player that's made the offence that speak to the referee, not every single 22-man squad that runs onto the pitch. And I won't be surprised if I see a bloody owner run onto the pitch one day. It's ridiculous, and there should be a level of respect in football, because it's just going to keep going the way of the referees are going to get more stubborn because they don't like the way they're being treated. So they're going to carry on making mistakes because they feel the pressure to make those judgments and to make those decisions with a split second. And if we hear the VAR, maybe we don't sit here week in, week out saying the officials are clueless, they're this, they're that, because we hear what they say. And I think it's something massive that the Premier League have to look into.
I find it slightly concerning in a way that the Australian League is more progressive than the Premier League. But fair play to them for doing that. But Joe, you've raised a really good point there. That it's a bit of a vicious circle. The players don't respect the referees. The coaches don't respect the referees because so many big decisions, even in this world of VAR, are still going wrong. And I think it has to be one of those things where the respect does need to increase, but at the same time, that respect has to be earned which means that contentious decisions like some of the ones we're going to talk about today need to be addressed. And, again, bringing it back to rugby, I know that in rugby, the referees all sit down after the games of a weekend and they unpick the games. They unpick what went wrong and what didn't. I don't know if that happens in football, and I wouldn't be surprised if it didn't happen at all. But anyway, we move.
The only thing I know is that the referees write a report at the end of the game. That's the only thing I know. Whether there's weekly meetings or monthly meetings, no idea.
And I know that, like, you have things like BT Sport, they have like a ref in-house, and they're like, what did you think of that decision? And he's like, well, I don't think it was a red card. You know what I mean? He analyzes that too, which I think is quite good as well if you're watching that, because you get a better understanding. But we shouldn't have to wait until after the game to hear a reasoning for why this, in our opinion, like a clear and obvious thing, isn't a thing. So it should just happen mid-game, like you said.
It also helps people understand the game better as well. Like people that don't watch the game, like if you get into football late, like in your late 20s, and you want to learn the rules of football, what better way to listen to the referee explaining to the players on the pitch what they're doing? I know for a fact that in the rugby, again, to bring it back to the rugby, a few years ago, there was a decision made by a referee, and James Haskell goes up to him and he's like, I don't understand that rule. What have you just done? And the referee explains it there and then, and he walks away saying, fair enough. You get that clarity, and we need that clarity in football. It's just getting ridiculous.
You do indeed. And we're going to talk a bit about that right now, because the first goal that Manchester City scored was a contentious one. I think Manchester City were struggling to break us down. And for all their lovely interchanging, all their lovely passing moves, it actually took a long ball to completely cut us in two. We were playing a very high line. Haaland, he cut between Dunk and Webster, who were playing him onside. He chests it past the advancing Sanchez, and we'll talk about Sanchez's positioning in a minute, because I think Sanchez got that completely wrong.
Say what you want, though. It was a beautiful goal.
Oh, hell yeah. And this is the bit that's contentious, because obviously after he's gone round Sanchez, him and Webster collide. Webster goes down, and Haaland obviously passes it basically into an empty net. And now a lot of Brighton fans were up in arms about that and whether it should have been a foul or not. And here's an exact example of why during the check, it would have been so useful to have heard that referee insight, because for me, that's not a foul on Webster. Haaland is simply too strong. The contact, if you look at the initial contact, they're more or less shoulder to shoulder. And Webster is just not strong enough to handle Haaland. And for what it's worth, I don't think there are going to be many centre-backs in the league who are going to be strong enough to handle Haaland. Yes, there is a slight little push, but again, I think that's more of a, they've come together. Haaland's put his arm out, and Webster's already falling for me. I think I've watched it almost frame by frame, and Webster's already starting to fall before the push even happens. So I think it's wishful thinking. But again, here's an exact example of why it would have been really useful for Brighton fans to hear what was going on, what was being said in the VAR. Because if the VAR officials had turned, no, the initial contact, shoulder to shoulder, it's fair, it's a goal, it might just do a little bit to help ease that sort of initial, aggravation that Brighton fans felt that it should have been a foul. Now, Joe, I've said my bit on it. I don't think it's a foul. What are your views on it? Was it a foul? Was Haaland just simply too strong?
If I have to give it a percentage of what I think, because it's again, like I said earlier, one of those things that it could go for you, could go against you. I'm probably 70% in the camp that it wasn't a foul. I think if Webster is a little bit more advanced ahead of Haaland and he goes down from a Haaland touch on the back or on the side, that's a foul, I believe. But as you say, Tom, they're side by side. Haaland's just got too much strength and too much body for Webster to deal with, and as you rightly say, for any centre back to deal with. Really, the man is a bloody robot. It's just one of those unfortunate things where, yeah, Webster's fallen over, and then Haaland's presented with an open net, which he's most definitely not going to miss. And as you rightly said just before that, forget about Webster, whether it's a foul. Sanchez, where the hell are you? Whether he thought he could get there before Haaland, whether he thought Haaland was further away than he was and he's just mistimed it. It doesn't make sense. And then Lewis Dunk and Webster aren't going to catch up with Haaland, and it's just one of those things where the defense switched off for a bit and weren't as strong as people expect them to be. But as I said, against Haaland, I certainly wouldn't want to come across him on a football pitch. So yeah, not for me.
Yeah, I thought it was quite funny that some fans have been likening it to a rugby tackle. I'm like, no, a rugby player wouldn't have fallen over to that. But it goes to show you just how much body strength rugby players probably possess because of the
Rugby Obsessed.
Rugby. Welcome to Rugby Obsessed. But yeah, a rugby player wouldn't have gone down. But that's because obviously they're a lot physically stronger and footballers are a lot quicker. Because there's obviously a huge difference of physicality in rugby. But anyway, we move. Kurtis, just got your thoughts on that goal. A bit of a calamitous, the defenders, very high line, then playing Haaland on side. Sanchez's movement, was it a foul? All your thoughts, please. All of them.
I kind of saw it coming, to be brutally honest. I saw their goalkeeper with the ball, and I saw him about to punt it up, and I could just see Haaland making a run, and I was like, oh, God, he's going to go for a long ball. And then it all played out exactly as I saw it in my head. And in regards to the foul, the way I see it is it depends on the angle that you're looking at it from, because certain angles it looks like he shoves him, and then other angles, yeah, it looks like he's already falling before the push even is initiated. So I'm pretty much with Joe in the sense of like about 70% in the camp of it's not a foul, and we should just move on from the fact because it's happened now and there's nothing we can do about it. So,
yeah, definitely.
But also, I feel like I do feel like we just need to do much better there. We need to just mark that man better. And I know he's Erling Haaland. I get it, but we need to do much better. I mean, Sanchez, that wasn't great, and we need to talk about the fact that our defenders have not been that great for a long time. Again, not singling anybody out. I just mean as a whole, it's just not great.
Yeah, we're conceding a lot of goals at the moment. It was always a bit of a given against City, I suppose, but that doesn't mean we need to make it easy for them. We'll discuss a bit about my thoughts about the third goal a bit later. As brilliant as it was, we did make it very easy for them. But yeah, all it would have taken Webster to step up, to play Haaland offside, Sanchez to hold his ground, and perhaps that goal doesn't go in. But we move on to contentious decision. Oh, wait, before I go on to contentious decision number 3, I just want to give out a big shout out to North Stand Seagull on Twitter, Mike, for engaging with me on Twitter. We disagreed about whether it was a foul or not. I thought it wasn't. Mike thought it was. But neither of us resorted to name calling or to being rude. And it just shows that actually, you know what, you can disagree with someone. You can think different things and not be reduced to saying, oh, you're wrong, your opinion's wrong, and all this nonsense and being rude and stuff. So yeah, big shout out to you, Mike. Thank you for engaging with me in a really respectful way.
And this is why you should download the app Parley, PRLY, on the App Store, because we're going to have positive, good, healthy debate and conversation. So yeah, download it now.
And don't worry, guys, there'll be no risk of it being bland or anything over there, Joe, will it? So
no risk of it being mundane or bland or anything like that. No chance, no.
Joe's going to do a backflip later. New.
Hi, Mark.
Just gymnastics obsessed.
Backflips over on Parley right now.
Yeah. So let's talk about contentious decision number 3 then. The City penalty. Joe, what on earth are you doing? Morse code?
He's flashing us.
I'm doing a light show for everyone.
This is a professional podcast. Yes, let's talk about the penalty, which was the third the VAR decision that was wrong. This was not a penalty. The first one was Sanchez and Haaland. For me, that's a penalty. This one, certainly not. So Silva gets the ball in the box and then kicks Lewis Dunk's leg. Falls over, rolls around a little bit. But the thing that grates even more is that play goes on for a few minutes after Craig Pawson. He's like, nah, it's not a penalty, play on. Play goes on for a good 2 minutes while it's being checked by Lee Mason, who, by the way, is an appalling official. No apologies there from me whatsoever. It took 2 minutes of checking, Joe, and then another 45 seconds for Pawson to go over to the monitor to check. If it takes that long, Joe, the best part of 3 minutes, is that a clear and obvious error? Or was Pawson, I suppose, making up for the penalty he should have given earlier in the game?
Well, one thing I'll say is it's not the first time it's taken them an absolute age, Man United at home after the final whistle, to give a Manchester club a VAR decision that gives them an extra goal and has them on their way to winning. And I'm not sitting here saying, oh, match fixing, officiating, they big six bias, big six bias.
There was a lot of big six bias.
It really is. It really is. Silva dangles his leg, waiting to be kicked, and that happens. And as you say, VAR is there for a very good reason, for clear and obvious errors. If it takes 6 hours to get a decision, then it's not clear and obvious. So it certainly needs to be improved. Or, as we said earlier, give us the clarity, and then maybe we will understand what's going on. But other than that, yeah, stupid decision.
Silva dangles his legs, and then you can see in the replay he moves it to force the contact with Dunk. And you're telling me that none of the officials spotted what we could all see?
It's like,
Kurtis,
wow,
what are your thoughts?
he's dragging his leg towards him. That's a definite foul. Bullshit.
Yeah, so you're telling me on the micro slowed down evidence of this foul in the box or whatever, you couldn't see this player kicking Lewis Dunk's leg, and you're doing this for 3 minutes, yeah. And all we get is a screen saying checking for possible foul. That's all we get. That's all we get. Just some transparency, please, because how come we, as a whole fan base, can look at that and go, well, obviously not. but two men or two or three people or whoever it is get to decide that is what that is. It's appalling. It's appalling officiating, and it made me so unbelievably angry. And I'm a positive guy usually, right? But I was like, no, frick that guy.
I mean, don't get us wrong. We've already sat here and said that, we should have gone in more or less at 2-0 at halftime, regardless. But as I say, they've got both penalty decisions wrong. The first one should have been a penalty, and the second one shouldn't. But it's the fact that such a poor decision was made. It took so long to do it, and that's, again, if it takes that long, it's not clear and obvious. If it takes that long to go, it's not clear and obvious. And there is no way. I mean, we saw some really poor officiating in the second half, and I'm going to talk about I'm going to talk about now, actually. Joe, I'm going to talk to you about this moment in the second half that had me absolutely fuming. So Gross puts a tackle on Mahrez. Craig Pawson waves play on, doesn't give the foul. The City fans start booing, so Pawson changes his bloody mind. He blows the whistle, brings it back, and he books Gross.
Was this when we were in the box at the time, weren't we?
I can't remember, but I just remember being fuming. And I think, was it De Bruyne? He bloody elbowed someone, and nothing, not even a free kick.
Do I even have to add to that?
Just echo what he just said. Ultimately,
honestly, referees are so. I don't want to say this, but I kind of do. But they're so weak with their decisions, and I'm not saying they're mentally weak or anything like that. I'm not attacking the person that they are. I'm attacking or I'm saying what they're doing wrong on the football pitch, which is what we're here to talk about. Nothing against them as a person, but you have to be stronger there. You cannot give in to the pressure of a crowd who don't say a bloody word for the whole game. So that's probably why it seemed a little bit louder or a little bit more intimidating, because the Man City fans actually made a bloody noise. And yeah, he's then given a foul, and he probably thought, Brighton could score here, so yeah, should probably blow my whistle. And there's nothing he could do for the goal that we did score, which hopefully we'll talk about in a minute, because that's a bit more positive. But yeah, it's one of those things where it's like, well, what you trying to achieve here? I'm so not a conspiracy theorist, so I so don't want to sit here and say Big Six bias all the time. But you can't look past it. You really can't. Put that down, Curtis. Gosh, you cannot show that on this podcast for the audio listeners.
He just threw you a red card there, Joe. You have to.
For the audio listeners, that was just a picture of the referee, nothing else.
It's frustrating because, of course, we don't want to be on here almost every week complaining about officials and their decisions. And we understand, of course, that we will be biased because we are Brighton fans, and there will always be a sense of bias. But I think already in this podcast, we've indicated and we've shown that we can be balanced, and we can say, we should have conceded a penalty. That wasn't a foul on Webster. So we can show a sense of balance here. But the officiating on show at the Etihad was shocking. I think by the end of the game, Pawson had completely lost control, and he was just making it up as he went along. And it was just so frustrating to see. And I've said it on this show so many times, and that makes me feel really sad. It's really hard to sit there and watch this happen and not conclude that actually maybe the referees, they're afraid of giving certain players cards. They're afraid of giving fouls against certain teams or at certain grounds.
Harry Kane.
Yeah, I mean, it's shocking the way some teams, players, and are protected by the referees.
It's happening in a lot of games. I mean, say what you want, and I know we have that rivalry with Palace, but Palace have had the really short end of the stick with the referees' decisions as well this season. And it's not just an us problem. It's just a football issue, and something needs to change because it can ruin a game. It can honestly turn a whole game on its head. And if it was a really important game that could potentially put you in the top 4 or something like that, and then that sort of decision ruins that for you, that's ridiculous.
And I think that's the really key thing. This isn't just affecting Brighton, it's affecting everyone. And the whole point of VAR was that it was supposed to be introduced to stop these mistakes being made, and they are still being made on a weekly basis, on a game-by-game basis. And it's infuriating. But let's stop talking about that, and let's start talking about this second half, where I think we probably played some of the best football we've seen under Roberto De Zerbi. The first half an hour against Liverpool was amazing, but I think the 45 minutes that we played after half time was some of the best stuff we've played in a long time. So let's talk about the change that happened, Joe, at halftime, which was Tariq Lamptey coming on for Lallana, who I believe is carrying a knock or an injury or something. But Lamptey came on and it changed the game. Solly March went back into a left wing back role as Tariq Lamptey came on the right. Trossard became more central, and Man City didn't seem to know how to deal with it. Joe, what was your impression when we came out in the second half and we were playing the way we were playing?
Mad what happens when you inject a bit of pace into the team. That's but Tarek done it in the game last season. I believe he came off the bench and gave City a real hard time on that right hand side and won us a few things, and I believe won us the penalty. I might be mistaken for another player there, but it's I'm really, really happy for Tarek that he came on and changed the game and changed the team in the way that he did. And to have Solly and Tarek on the wings was fantastic to see. And I hope we see more of that because we've got two fantastic wing backs there. And like Solly March is even being spoken about to be in the 55-man squad that Gareth Southgate is due to name. So that's really promising stuff. I know it's 55 players and there's more of a chance of a Brighton player being picked. But it's really promising.
You've got to be having a laugh.
Yeah, but it's media rumours, isn't it? But I'm not holding out much hope. But no, for Tarek to be back in a place where he can create that impact should be really good for his confidence. And I would absolutely adore to see him start more games and get back to the player that we know he can be, because he can flip a game on its head, and he showed that against the best team in the league.
Yep, definitely did. Let's talk about the goal then, Kurtis, shall we? But before we do that, Kurtis, we've got to talk about Sanchez making a pretty decent save against Mahrez. Mahrez is through on goal. has a chance to make it 3-0, which he arguably perhaps should do. But Sanchez makes a really good a really good save, sorry. And then we surge upfield and do one of the least Brighton things I think I've ever seen, which was a pacey counter attack that leads to a goal. So Albion launched the counter from that save. March gets the ball on the left, lays it off to Trossard, who goes for the goal early, completely catching Edison off guard. And it goes in at the near post, and we score a goal. Fantastic goal, wasn't it, Kurtis?
I just want to hear more Solly March slander anymore, because what a beautiful assist that was to set up that goal. Like, I mean, everyone, it was a really good, I thought it was a really good team thing. It was really good, a really great goal from Trossard as well. Well, I think had a couple of shots, I think in the first, I might be wrong, but I think he did. So I was really happy for him to get that. And I think he scored, 6 now and 11, I think it is, which is good for him, if you look at those stats. So yeah, just really, really good from us. As you say, we don't do these very quick counter attacks often. So more of that, please.
It goes to show you we can do it. And as Joe says, it shows you what happens when we have pace in the side. I mean, Solly and Trossard are no slouches. Tarek is obviously lightning quick when he can be. And that's exactly what we needed. And we went up the pitch and we scored.
To talk about Tarek really quick, sorry. It was so good to see him on, and I know he sort of fell out of favour maybe with Potter a bit, especially after his injury, considering like he clearly was sort of he became a different player after that, and understandably probably very worried about re-injuring himself and things like that. But I hope he's able to kick on, and I hope that he gets a lot more chances under De Zerbi. So.
Yeah, I really do hope so, because he looked excellent. One thing we are going to, we might actually see him, Joe, start against Chelsea, because Joel Veltman went off injured, which was really disappointing because he's such a fantastic player for us. Purvis came on, we moved to more of a back four. Just really quickly, Joe, on Veltman, disappointing to see such a consistent player hobble off with an injury.
Yeah, widely known to Brighton fans as being Mr. Consistent, and I think underrated outside of our fan base as well. No, everyone looks at Dunk, everyone looks at Webster, but nobody really looks at Joel Veltman, and even the Dutch manager doesn't. He must be a Dutch version of Gareth Southgate and hate Brighton, because how a Leeds player gets in ahead of Joel Veltman, it just baffles me when they're in the relegation scrap. And Veltman, for the last 3 seasons, really maybe 2 seasons, has been in the form of his life.
Just to quickly interrupt there, Joe, because I actually saw on a report saying that some of the media over in the Netherlands have actually been calling out for Joel Veltman to be called up because of his consistent performances.
Well, that says it all, really, Tom. If you've got Joel Veltman and Van Dijk in your defence, you know you're going to have a very solid and sure defence. And arguably, I'd probably say Joel Veltman's had a better season than Van Dijk, which is mental for me to say. But Liverpool haven't lit anything up really, except for their game against City and at the start of the season when they won the Community Shield. But Veltman, massively underrated. Hopefully it's not too serious, but if it is more serious than as what we think, he's going to be a massive miss.
Yeah, he's just he's just one of those guys that if he wasn't on the team sheet, I'd be like, why? It's just Veltman. He's just so consistent and what have you. So yeah, like what Joe said, hopefully it's nothing that can keep him out for a while. I hope he's back soon and all that. Yeah.
Well, thankfully, we've only got 3 games until the World Cup, so hopefully, if he is out, he won't be out for too many games. So let's keep talking about that positivity, because I have to say, guys, I was so impressed watching Albion knock the ball around against City. One touch, bam, one touch, pass and move, really simple stuff. The sort of gameplay that you would normally expect to see from Manchester City. It was bizarre watching a Guardiola side chasing shadows, attempting to get possession back from little old Brighton. It was just I just couldn't believe what I was seeing. There was some lovely interplay, and we're going to talk about a chance that unfortunately didn't come to anything. It was when Brighton went from front to back, back to front even, back to front, when Lamptey had his chance in the area with that header. Joe, I mean, some of that interplay was simply stunning. You can't tell me that football under Roberto De Zerbi is boring.
I mean, that's some of the best football you'll see played in the Premier League this weekend. And I'm not even being biased in saying that. It was scintillating football, and as you say, to have Man City chasing you and looking around to see what the hell was going on with Brighton turning into prime Barcelona. I think Pep must have thought he was in the opposing dugout for a second, and I've no doubt he probably applauded that move, and he probably applauded it because Tarek didn't score. But no, yeah, it's beautiful football, and for people to question De Zerbi now, after seeing that sort of football being played, you got to be crazy. You had to be absolutely crazy, because even under Graham Potter, people. Actually, Ryan on Seagull Social, I'll give him a shout out here because he explained it absolutely wonderfully well. When Graham Potter left, we were up here, right? So he left, took everything with him, and we were down there. Even if we get to here, we're not going to think it's an improvement or it's good football because we're not here anymore. So people have to give it that chance to rise and for our players to get to know the De Zerbi way and to get comfortable with how De Zerbi manages, because we've seen from their press conferences they are two very, very different individuals in how they go about their approach to the game. And there's a language barrier and everything like that. So I'm sure once it all clicks, we're going to be here again, because some of the football we've played over the last few games has been fantastic. We just have to wait for it to click.
And we have to bear in mind how long it took for us to really settle into the Potter style, 3 seasons, I think it was, or something like that. And, just be patient. Patience is a virtue, so they say. Isn't that right, Thomas?
They do say this, I can confirm. And I don't know if it's just my short memory, but I can't recall ever going to the Etihad under Potter and playing football like that. I mean, again, it might be selective memory, and it might obviously be because this is fresh, but I don't ever remember going to the Etihad and playing like that. I mean, 45 minutes, and yes, the result was disappointing because we lost, but I don't think we've ever played football like that at the Etihad. We've never gone to the Etihad and had more possession than Manchester City, and I think we're the first team this season to do that. And I know some people will sit there and be like, "Whoa, you're well and good having 51% possession, but if you don't win, what's the?" It shows the progress, and it shows that what you can do to hurt teams like City. And a lot of Man City fans after the game, and I know it's very easy to say this once you've gone and won, but a lot of Man City fans after the game were saying Brighton were the best team that they've seen at the Etihad this season. So that is really high praise. Let's talk about another huge chance that would have changed the game on its head, and that's Trossard surging forward on a 40-yard lung-busting run, who gets into the City box, has a shot. Edison saves it. Really crucial save. He could have, perhaps, if he'd got his head up squared to Welbeck, who would have had a simple tap in. But Kurtis, I mean, that's a lot easier said than done when you're bearing down on goal. You're in good form. And I think Welbeck had a few choice words to say after that chance, but still a decent chance. But could he have just passed that ball to Welbeck?
Yeah, definitely. I think sometimes, especially in previous seasons, I've noticed that Trossard has a bit of a tendency to not make those key passes sometimes. And I understand, you want to get the goal and everything. That's Gucci and all that, but it's a team game. Sometimes you have to pass to your teammates. But again, it's just one of those things. It's frustrating, but we move.
We do. It is frustrating. And Joe, the importance of that stop and the importance of what could have been is no louder than the fact that within 2 minutes, Man City went up the other end and scored. De Bruyne did score a hell of a goal, 30 yards out and stuff, but could Brighton have done a little bit better there? I think, as Silva's, I think it was Silva bearing down on our box, there's no Brighton player going out to meet him. There's no pressure on the player whatsoever. It's so easy for him to just pick out De Bruyne. Caicedo does what he can, but he's still too far away to make anything. Hell of a goal, though.
Yeah, I think right there in that 2 minutes, 3 minutes where we had the chance and then they score, that's where you see the difference in between a team like us and a team like Manchester City. You can't switch off because you've had a chance, because as soon as they get a chance to come back and bite you on the arse, they're going to do it, and they're going to do it with aplomb. So it's one of those things where we just weren't switched on enough, and the class of that De Bruyne strike, we can do better, but nobody stops that. Not even 4 goalkeepers stop that. So
I don't think my criticism is certainly not at Sanchez. No keeper in the world is going to stop that, I don't think. But it was more just, the lack of pressure on the ball from Silva. I think the nearest player is about 10, 15 yards away. As like I said at the top of the show, they are the best team in Europe, best team in the world, probably. That doesn't mean you've got to sit there and make it easy for them.
That's why I say, like, as you said, we see the difference between the two teams. You can't switch off and give a team like Manchester City that much space, because they've got De Bruyne there who can pull off a strike like that. Absolutely no blame to Sanchez, not one bit. But yeah, one of those things where the class shows and De Bruyne does what he does best.
But it does probably show, doesn't it, Kurtis, that Manchester City needed something pretty special to stop Brighton's momentum.
I mean, yeah. I mean, they're such a good team, They almost feel like a cheat code, you know what I mean? So, but to limit them to not a huge amount really in that second half was quite good to see. I feel like a lot of the Brighton fans sort of needed to see that, but I'm pretty proud of the performance overall. It was a loss, fine, but who honestly went into the game and thought, oh yeah, seriously thought we were going to beat them. So considering the form that they're on, so I think overall I'm just pretty happy with the performance. So.
Yeah, I think that's fair. I mean, if you can look past the result, I know we don't get any points from it, and I know that's what people will say. People will say you don't get any points for possession, you don't get any points for playing pretty football, but it does show you what Brighton under De Zerbi can do against teams that don't just sit back. And the fact that Manchester City, a team that are known for their fantastic, sublime interplay, the fact that they were limited to a penalty, a goal from a long ball, and a long shot worldie, I suppose it does go to show you that we've come a long way since our first, games in the Premier League, where it was a case of keep the score down, lads, sit back. We went and we played, and I think all Brighton fans should be proud of that, and all Brighton fans should be excited for the future. And what better place, Joe, to be excited about than next Saturday? Because next Saturday, something quite important's happening. Because some twat, a man from a place called Solihull, which is 45 minutes that way, from me, is coming to visit the Amex. He last visited about 2 months ago, and his name is Graham Potter. He comes with his new team, Chelsea. How lovely would it be, Joe, for Roberto De Zerbi to get his first victory at the Amex against the man who left us?
Tom, I'd cry with happiness. I legitimately would. I said it before the Forest game. I said it'd be the most Brighton thing to do to not get a result against Forest. We won't think about the Man City game, and then we'll go and beat Chelsea. And what a way to, as you say, for Roberto De Zerbi to hopefully get his first win as Brighton manager, and the bragging rights it would give us over the Chelsea fans that gave us so much hell and so much entitlement over Cucurella and Graham Potter and our backroom staff and our tea lady and our kit man and our groundsman. It's going to be one of those games where it's going to be edgy. It's going to be tense, and I so badly want to beat him. with Chelsea, it's another one of those when you're in the Premier League playing against Chelsea. It's like we might win, we might not. I don't care if we lose. There's no shame in losing to Chelsea. Now I'm like, you go out there and you bloody beat them, and I bet the players have so much motivation to go out there and give them the hardest, most brutal game going. And yeah, I'm here for it.
Me too, and I'm not bitter in the slightest. I promise. Kurtis, are you looking forward to the Chelsea game? Would you make any changes? Billy Gilmore looked pretty decent last couple of games. Tariq Lamptey looked very good, as we said, against Manchester City. How would you approach the game against Chelsea at the weekend?
First things first, in the words of Kevin Keegan, I'd love it if we beat them. I would love it. Legitimately would love it. But on the other hand, thank you, Joe. Thank you. On the other hand, yeah, I would like to see Tariq start, if I'm honest. I'd like to see a bit of pace injected into the team. I think that'd be really good. Hopefully, maybe Matoma might be back. We don't know because we were only told past the City game. So yeah, I would like to see some change. I think it would be quite refreshing. You know, I'd like to see some Gilmore get some minutes. Maybe Undav get a start. Please, for the love of Christ. And maybe just have Welbeck sit out just one game if that's allowed. Just for his sake, I think it could be quite beneficial to him. But yeah, some changes will definitely be good. I think it's going to be a tough game, definitely. But I agree with Joe. I think what Joe said about the players being up for it, hopefully, and we'll go in there and grab it by the scruff of the neck and do what we can do.
Yep. And let's hope that our fans make the Amex an absolute fortress. Let's hope they are noisy from before kickoff and they give Chelsea players and their coaching staff not abuse, because I don't condone that, but let's make it a really uncomfortable game for them. Let's
Tom,
make
we
it a
don't
really
we don't
uncomfortable game.
we don't talk about Bruno. All right, we don't talk about Bruno.
Someone had to say it, didn't they?
I'm not angry. I am angry.
This is where you boot me off.
Just disappointed.
Tom.
Not with you, Curtis. Not with you.
Tom, this game, right? I say I'm over it, and we say we're over it, and we say, oh, we're not bitter and all this stuff. But I've got so much feeling in me just talking about this. So I don't know how I'm going to be at the game. As you say, absolutely don't condone abuse. But if we score, when we do these incredible bits of play that we've seen, there's just going to be so much pride in me in this football club that we've hopefully. I'm not talking out of turn here, but hopefully we'll bounce back against the man that I don't think he did it intentionally, but the man that ruined our football club and ruined where we were going. So yeah, what a day it'll be to get back at him. And yeah, there's a lot of fire in my belly and a lot of passion in my heart at the moment to be talking about that man.
It will.
I agree.
I can imagine it being a very not toxic atmosphere, but I can imagine it being very, very heated. I can see some booing. Maybe we'll get another history lesson.
A Potter and De Zerbi scrap, maybe.
My money's on De Zerbi.
Yeah.
No, it is gonna be an interesting game. Tensions will be high, emotion will be high. As I say, let's just hope that the fans in attendance can really make that a really noisy night, push the players on, and then push them over the line.
Is it at home or is it home? Isn't it? At home. Okay.
Yep, it's at the Amex. So go and make the Amex noisy. Go make it a fortress, fans. Go and show Potter what he's missed out on by choosing to join Chelsea. Before we sign off, gentlemen, let's do some score predictions. So, Joe, coming to you first. Score against Chelsea, please.
Tom, I'm going big. 4-0. 4-0 Brighton. Massive, hefty, absolute smash. Yeah.
If we play like we did in the second half against Manchester City.
Honestly, the Chelsea fans, they're all going to be tweeting #Potter out after this game, because we're going to go out there and I run the risk of making myself look like an absolute twat here, but we're going to go out there and absolutely annihilate them. and I'm so ready for it.
Nice, I like it. Kurtis, your score prediction, please.
Guys, I'm going to go big here. Right, get ready. Right. 1-1.
Interesting.
Jesus Christ, 1-1.
Oh, well, that's be for a Graham
But
Potter side.
I'm
that's a
unsure.
pretty big scoreline.
I'm unsure on the goal scorer though, or goal scorers. So
I'm going to go 7-0. Who didn't Graham Potter like to play? I don't know. Graham Potter's least.
Steele.
Jason Steele to score all 7. No. I think realistically, I would love it if we went out and we did thrash them, but the chances of that happening are probably not high. I'm going to go with a nice 2-0 win. If we can keep a clean sheet, that'll be a bonus. But we'll have to wait and see. And I'm going to go with a Trossard brace because I think out of all the players who look like scoring at the moment, Trossard is your man. So yeah, I'm going to go with 2-0.
For my goal scorers, I'm going to go with Trossard brace, Caicedo, and Tarek Lamptey against his former club.
You know what? I'm going to put the stakes even higher here. Right? If we win the next podcast, I will wear a wig. I'm not even joking. A big wig. I promise. I have it.
Not a curly one.
Not
a curly one.
Not a curly wig. I will wear a wig if we win the next game. So there's your incentive.
Beautiful.
Albion.
We'll send it to the club and we'll make sure they see it. But no, thank you guys for joining us on our Post-Man City podcast. Let us know your thoughts down below. What did you think of the contentious decisions made by the officials throughout? Were we lucky to escape the first penalty? Was it a foul on Webster? Was the second penalty a penalty, or was it just terrible officiating? What did you make of the second half performance? What would you do against Chelsea? What are you hoping to see? Would you rather beat Chelsea or beat Palace? Let us know. I know, Jar. That's a tweet that we put out earlier on the old social media. So yeah, let us know in the comments down below. Who would you rather beat, Palace or Chelsea? Keep in mind the context of the Chelsea game. And of course, check out Parlay as well. You can find us on the app, and we can have some great discussions and engagements about Brighton and Hove Albion, the club we all love. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe for more content if you haven't done so already. I hope it hasn't been too mundane for you. We'll find you. We'll see you next time. Take care.